Hi, I'm Marlene Trestman, and I'm here today at the Museum of the Southern Jewish Experience in New Orleans to take you on a small tour of the exhibition called Most Fortunate Unfortunates that occupies the entire third floor gallery of this beautiful museum. Come along with me. Most Fortunate Unfortunates tells the story and history of the Jewish Orphans Home of New Orleans, the first purpose-built Jewish orphanage in the nation. I was the guest curator of this special exhibit, aided by the wonderful staff here at this gem of a museum. I was inspired to write about the Orphans Home based on an earlier book, Fair Labor Lawyer, the story and biography of Bessie Margolin, a trailblazing lawyer in our country who grew up in the home. Researching her life in this remarkable orphanage is what compelled me to learn more about that orphanage and write the first comprehensive history of its story. One of the first things you'll see in this special exhibition is this 24-foot timeline that covers the history of the home from its founding in 1855 till its closing in 1946. The timeline is embedded with photographs and artifacts and text that will take you along this historic journey. When it was founded in 1855, the Jews of New Orleans were credited with taking their place among the other religious orphanages that had been established in New Orleans. In fact, the New Orleans Daily Crescent of 1856 boasted, "We're happy to see that our Jewish citizens have erected an asylum which shall entitle them to an equal standing with those of other religions." One of the artifacts I want to stop and talk about on the timeline is this wonderful souvenir silk napkin from a banquet in 1886, where the home's financial partner, B'nai B'rith, hosted a dinner in honor of the founding of the new home on St. Charles Avenue. B'nai B'rith was an important partner not only for its funding, but in return, the home expanded from housing children from only New Orleans or surrounding areas, but from across the Mid-South, from children from all of the 7 member states of B'nai B'rith. At the far end of the wall, we talk about the closing of the home in 1946. When the institution finally gave in to the trends of the nation to care for dependent children in private foster care rather than in institutions, as loving as the institution of the home was. When the home closed, the building was transferred in its ownership to the Jewish Community Center and functioned in that way till today. But in 1964, the JCC demolished the old home building and erected the white modern structure on St. Charles Avenue that we know today. What we have here is a brick from the building of the home in 1886 that was preserved when the building was torn down in 1964 to make way for that JCC building. The institution of the home, the organization, transformed into the Jewish Children's Regional Service, still in operation today, much like many other Jewish orphanages across the nation transformed into non-residential social service agencies. On the brick wall opposing the timeline is a roster of the portraits of the professionals who ran the home, beginning with the matrons who were hired in the beginning, all the way to Superintendent Harry Ginsberg, who closed the home. The matrons are represented by a silhouette reminiscent of the fashion of the time, owing to the fact that there simply was not enough documentation about those women who often led the home, not only through the Civil War, but through recurrent epidemics. I spent the most time, probably had the most fun, researching the lives, the daily lives of the children, how they spent their days, why they came into the home, and how they left. The entire central focus of this exhibition is dedicated to photographs, stories, and artifacts related to the children's lives. Let's take a look at that now. In this section of the central display, you can learn about the wide range of reasons children were admitted to the home. There were any number of maladies and misfortunes and dysfunctions that befell families from the middle of the 19th century into the 20th. There are clippings about some of those. Many of the children who entered the home came in large sibling groups, which an institution like the home could easily accommodate. One of my favorite parts of this section is the suitcase that one of the young men who left the home in the 1930s carried with him and went on to make his way in life after his discharge. Among orphanages in America, and even among Jewish orphanages in America, the home was relatively small, never occupied by more than 173 children at a time, and that was only in 1915 for a few months. On this wall, you can learn about the daily creature comforts of the way in which the home and its board cared for these children as part of their mission to make them self-sufficient and productive Jewish Americans, which manifested in the way they bathed, the way they ate, the way they slept, and especially the way they dressed to make sure they could fit in with their wealthier peers in the community. To honor the founding mission of the home, to keep the children within their Jewish faith, religious observance and education took a central part in their lives. For the most part, this was Reform Jewish education and observance, and manifested by 1886 in the inclusion and building of a small synagogue within the home on St. Charles Avenue, where the children worshiped on Shabbat and high holiday services and were confirmed. By 1926, in an effort to better expose the children to their community peers, the home closed its synagogue and instead distributed the children to the 3 neighboring Reform temples for their Jewish observance and education. In case you believe that life in the home was dull and dreary, I hope you'll take a moment enjoying this section. The children, by the turn of the 20th century, were encouraged to initiate and participate in clubs and all sorts of activities like band, scouting, and drama. One of the most beloved recollections of home alumni whom I got to speak with was summers spent at the camp in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi. They spoke about being in nature, spending time singing with friends, dipping their toes into the Gulf, and even crabbing. Many people across the country have heard of my alma mater, the Isidore Newman School, located here in New Orleans. Far fewer people know that the school was founded by the Jewish Orphans Home, opening in 1904, to educate the home's wards first, but also, uniquely, to educate children of the wealthiest children in the city, albeit then only white, whose parents could afford to pay tuition. When the school opened in 1904, welcoming some 100 children from the home and 23 of their community peers, it was known as the Isidore Newman Manual Training School, honoring not only its philanthropic founder, Isidore Newman, but also the particular type of educational philosophy it novelly used, called manual training. However, to this day, the school continues to honor its founding motto, Discimus Agere Agendo, we learn to do by doing. The home ensured that the children would be well prepared for life afterwards by providing them with important role models, including big sisters who were often wealthy women in the Jewish community who took the children to theater, into their homes, and provided them with attention, often exposing them to what the alumni referred to me as the finer things in life. They also received individual care and attention from student counselors who were usually medical or law or social work students at Tulane, LSU, and Newcomb, who received free room and board in exchange for spending time with the children, helping them with their homework, and even advising them on their love lives. Amid the intense racial segregation of the time, children in the home received loving attention, in their words, from Black custodians and other workers in the home, including Lottie Hopkins, the cook, and Bill Parker, a longtime custodian. Evidence of these close relationships can be found in the papers of Hilda Crystal White, who entered the home at age 2. She left a photograph in her papers on which she inscribed, "Edna, my nurse and substitute mother in the Jewish Children's Home." Hilda Crystal White went on to become a published author, including this book. Want to learn more about the history of New Orleans Jewish Orphans Home? I hope so. And you have a lot of ways to do that. The first is be sure not to miss the special exhibition at the museum. And while you're here, you can listen to former residents of the home share their experiences in their own words. In addition, you can find artifacts about some of the former residents, including the world-famous Sam Pulitzer, the maker, the world's largest manufacturer of ties, and even see some of his ties from the Wembley Tie Company. You can even have a wooden nickel made to honor Louis Berkey Berkowitz, one of the home residents who went on to claim fame in this People magazine as one of the nation's largest manufacturers of wooden nickels. For those wanting to roll up their sleeves and do some archival digging, the museum's new Chapman Family Research Center now also boasts some collections generously donated by the families of home alumni, and they're waiting for you. For me, the work's not done yet. I hope you'll take a look at my website, marlenetrestman.com, where I'm continuing to post profiles of former residents and staff of the home. And there you can find stories and pictures about the lives of these children and the impact that the home had on them. Once again, come visit this wonderful museum and the exhibition. Thank you for joining me today.